It's bright and sunny today, but just 2 weeks ago we had a severe winter storm in eastern Montana, and a little over a year ago we had 35 below zero. So it makes you wonder, how do you keep your gun running when it's that cold? Well, my friend Russ Holt prepared a special video for us to give us instruction on how to keep pistols and rifles running when it's extremely cold.
Cold weather firearms maintenance. We're going to go through a few of these things for you. The Korean War, the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir, was fought in November 1950. A lot of lessons came out of that battle as far as preparing your weapons for combat in cold weathers. It was the most extreme weather ever faced by our armed forces in our history. The lessons learned in that were passed down to my generation of soldiers who patrolled the Korean DMZ in the 1980s, and we'll go through setting your AR up for that kind of extremeness if you ever find yourself in a hunting or in combat situations. Preparing your firearm, the first thing you want to do is you want to get into cleaning it with rubbing alcohol, getting all the oil out of your weapon with Q-tips and rags as best you can. And the areas you need to concentrate most on are your trigger, sear, striker, and firing pins. You need those completely dry. Some of the oils that work best in cold weather are REM oil or military grade CLP, and this is about all that's good for us in cold weather, the CLP. It's not much of a lubricant otherwise, or it's not a cleaner either, which it's sold as. The friction surfaces are the most important part to get with your weapons. In the cold weather, once they're set up and clean, and by friction areas we're talking your rails, which are found on your carbines, or even your ARs, there's friction areas. And your bolt actions, you want to get your bolt and your rail areas. You don't want to lube anything else in this cold weather stuff. Grands the same way. Grands like to run on grease, but in cold weather that's a no-no. You need to use REM oil or CLPs in your rail areas. On your handguns, we want to look at the friction areas specifically, not any of the trigger group. So your barrel where the slag goes over, your hood, and what they call the dust cover on a 1911. Handgun, nothing in your trigger group, but your ejector rod needs a little bit of lubing. The little trick that we did in Korea is when we're in the cold weather, and we knew we were going to be out on patrols, we didn't take our weapons into our tents or store them if they were going to be for short periods, because if you left them in the cold, bringing them into the warm, you're going to get condensation, and that can produce rust or jamming later if the water gets into your system for operation, and that can freeze on you. We found that to work quite well. When you're in the field with your weapon, try to lay something over the action. Keep the moisture or the coldness off of it. And in temperatures at 25 below or dipping, when shooting starts, if you can, 10 to 15 seconds between shots if it's possible to allow the gun to warm up. At that temperature it's pretty critical and rough on the metal. So as hunters we can do that, but if you're in a different situation, do your best at that temperature to try to get 10 to 20 seconds between shots. The AR-15. Believe it or not, some of the best lube for this in the winter months is ATF. That's right. Transmission fluid works great in these. And there's the areas you want to lube are your bolt carrier, your cam bolt, and your cam bolt channel. The areas you don't want to lube are your firing pin or the tail of your bolt. Outside of that, with your M1As and your M1928, the bad thing about the 28 is it has a felt oiler in it. That's it's an extra thing it doesn't need, to be honest. And in cold weather, if that's got any lubricant in it, it could be very hazardous to the operation of the gun. The M1A1 is a large bolt that runs a lot of friction into the action in here. So that's just lube that and you're good to go. Nothing in the firing groups. Your biggest thing with your weapons and in cold weather is lubing your friction areas. Wherever you see rubbing that has been cleared from metal to metal, that needs some type of attention with oil.